Good evening and welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting, Monday, October 27th, 2014. And at the beginning, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last time.
So move. Second.
Have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, we're going to move a couple things in the order tonight. The sheriff called and requested to move on down the list. And also PAWS, as you see in front of you, has their new handbook, which, depending how many questions we have and how slow Mr. Gregory is, how long it lasts. So we will move the sheriff to next to last, and we'll move PAWS to last tonight. And another thing, this is the housekeeping, and we'll do it at the beginning this time because so everybody could hear it, but next month, the fourth Monday is the week of Thanksgiving. Some people like to go over the river and through the woods to Grandma's house that week. So Becky has checked, and we can move it to the week before, the third Monday, the 17th, if you want that. We can have a motion, or we can just do that ourselves. We don't really need a motion, I guess. But is there anybody that's got a problem with the third Monday, November 17th at 5:30? Okay. So we'll have November's meeting will be 5:30 on the 17th of November. And then, guess what? The fourth Monday in December comes close to Christmas. The 22nd would be the normal fourth Monday, but we can move it back to the 15th if you want to keep it on Mondays, and that would be the third Monday in December. That'll get away from anybody that's going to be okay. So we'll have December's will be at 5:30 on Monday, the 15th of December. Man. Everything goes that smoothly all year, we'll be in great shape in this county, won't we? Okay. All right, so I'll ask Mr. Nimley to come up for the EMS report. I didn't know you were going to get out of here so soon.
We made 2,405 calls for the month of September. Average response time was 7.8 minutes. We had 36 coroner's calls, and 12 of those resulted in autopsies. We billed $1,405,758, collected $616,186, which puts our year-to-date collections at $1,822,459, which is significantly ahead of the two previous years, if you notice there. And it also makes our yearly projection look good, and hope we can stay with that. We had $545,594 of insurance write-offs and $530,633 write-off on collection agencies. The table at the bottom of the page is the vehicles. The ones that are outlined, are they outlined on your computer?
Yeah.
The ones that are shaded in yellow are reserve ambulance. We drove a total of 44,465 miles. Operating cost was $31,026. And you see the individual cost per mile figured on each one of them. And we made 686 calls which were out of zone.
On the ambulances we have coming in, when are you anticipating they'll be in service? 70, 71, and 72 are last year's, correct?
Right.
The last three.
They're on the assembly line now. And last week we had two of our personnel that went up and checked on them, and one of them was here. So, Becky, you want to tell them how far they're along?
Yeah, the one we looked at on Thursday, it'll probably be off the line probably tomorrow, and then it has to go through a lot of inspections. We'll probably have them here probably 3 weeks.
The next page is various in-services training and activities of our special groups at the ambulance service. We had several things, as we usually do, for each one of those things. Especially this time of the year, the REACT team is very busy because not only do they do show and tells, but they also cover all the football games and high school and university.
I see a Yellow Dot program presentation at Trinity Bank. How easily is it to get that word out that people that
We kind of wish it wasn't out there so much.
Oh, okay.
It's been very, very popular.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, the only thing that's limiting us is our ability to get the materials from the state. Because it's certainly successful here.
Okay, that's good.
The next page is just a listing of the ambulance stations and what their response time is per station. We have another thing later on in here that gets a little bit more into detail on that. But that's a pretty typical month. Burton Street is our busiest ambulance most of the time. It also covers the smallest area in square miles, so the response time is good in that particular instance. We wish all of them were that good. And as you might expect, the outline ambulances cover a much bigger area, so their response time is usually a little slower. The next page is the same information I just gave you, except it's, no it's not, I'm trying to get ahead of myself, is the number of calls broken down by commissioner districts. Also the number of calls that we take to Nashville. And our critical transport team took a total of 59 calls for critical transfer, and then they also answered 99 911 calls. And now the next page is the same information.
Let me ask you something.
Yes.
Before we get out of this. You got your Nashville calls. Why do we have so many in the Salem area?
I don't know. You know, we take the patients where they want
Where they want to go,
and so that's the primary really thing. Now, if a patient were to tell us they wanted to go somewhere, and we knew that that facility was not capable of taking care of their problem, we would tell them that. But then if they said they still want to go, that's where we take them.
I just looked at everywhere else is 3, 13's the most, but in Salem is 82. I was just wondering.
Yeah, District 21, 214.
Yeah. That's every month too.
This matrix page is the one that we pay very close attention to because it tells you how many ambulance calls were made into each district, and it tells you who made them also. For instance, just the first one, Salem Road, our Salem Road station is our #1 ambulance. They made a total of 243 calls, but they made 181 of those calls. The rest of them were made by other ambulances. So you can kind of see where the calls are happening and who's responding to them. Anytime you see, for instance, Burton Street responded into Salem Road 15 times this month, that just simply means that when that call came in, the MTSU ambulance or the Salem Road ambulance was busy on a call.
And you can see that the ones that are like Laverne, that is the Davidson County line, or Manchester, don't have it. Well, Laverne doesn't have that many items on it because it's a long way to go. Manchester, because it's not so busy, and Burton Street is why they have to bring them into there. And you bring that, do you bring them closer?
Yeah, we bring the Manchester Road Station to Publix,
Mhm.
and then, of course, they're the backup for Salem Road,
Yeah.
Burton Street, and MTSU. And they don't come in there until they're all out. So.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of thank you notes there, and that's the end of the report.
I need to take a minute and just look at the thank you notes. Notice I've been on public safety for several years now. Commissioner Phillips has too. And I say, never seen a non-thank you note coming in here. Now they do a good job, that's why. And if you look at them, I'll entertain a motion. And if there's any more questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the report.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is that it?
I've got a couple of things. I just wanted to announce to you that the bids were open and awarded on renovation of the Pace Center over there. The low bidder was $267,929. And we gave them 3 alternates that they could bid on to, replacing the HVAC units and replace the fire alarm equipment and install the conduit for computers. We had enough money to go ahead and award those to the same person. So the total bid was $343,310. And that went to Dowell Construction Group.
Well, they had a good bid then. There was some question on that when it came before purchase, and they really meant what they said.
Yeah, we gave them 24 hours to
Yeah.
review their bid.
Well, that's good then.
Stuck by it.
Yeah. They're a company we've used here some before, I believe, also in here.
You asked us last month about providing you with some information concerning those electric stretchers.
Right.
And we put some stuff in your box. I don't know if y'all got it.
And on the internet too.
Right. And then we've got a representative from the people that make it here, if you have any questions.
Well, I'd just like to say, I single-handedly unloaded a 700-pound patient. So if I can do that, just about anybody.
Well, I mean, the information that came over people that use them, I thought was very interesting and it helped a lot, you know, where they were, and it generated more discussion, I know, because I know I'm on a budget also, and we talked about it.
I heard that y'all talked about it.
Yeah, and that, and people are wondering what is it, and I know one of the commissioners, I forwarded what y'all had sent me, and he was real impressed. Because he's one that he likes to make sure it's going to work good before he does. So did it come up to? It came up to the commission, didn't it? Last meeting about the stretchers.
No, I don't think so.
It didn't. Maybe I went to budget then. Okay, but I guess it'll come up this next time. But if y'all want the representative to come up, do you have any questions, or you feel comfortable with the stretchers? Comfortable. Okay. Well, thank you for being here, but we're happy now after we know some more about it, and it's going to, in the long run, it's going to save us. It's going to save us in OJI and this type thing because and we can carry some. I just know from the fact that it was when I was younger, and I had a friend, and she had some back problem, and she was definitely heavy. And we were going to try and get her to the doctor. 3 of us, my healthy guy. It was rough. When we had one of the manual stretchers, I can tell you, it's a lot easier to roll them over than one of these. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good job. So that Burton project out there in the Pace building came in, what, 7,000 less than the money, so we had pretty accurate what it was gonna come. They figured it out pretty good in advance. Okay. Fire and rescue. Chief Farley.
If Commissioner Phillips and Mr. Schaefer will indulge me a little bit, I want to kind of, I know some of y'all need the public safety. I want to kind of give you a little brief background. In 2010, Mayor Burgess decided to create a Rutherford County Fire Rescue Department. And at that time, we took Rutherford Department, Salem Blackman, and the Rutherford County Rescue Squad, and combined them to make a fire and rescue. Later on, Rock Bell and Southeast Rutherford decided to come on, so that has greatly enhanced our response area. What this did by taking over rescue and creating the rescue zones, we created, with our average response time in rescue was anywhere from 16 to 17 minutes. We have since purchased a rescue truck, put one at Amalville Fire Department, and we have one at Kipple Fire Department, and we have one at Walker Hill. We also have one at Station 1. And what this did, it broke down the response time from 17 minutes if you were involved in a vehicle crash that involved extrication or being cut out of that vehicle, from a response of 17 minutes down to 8-9 minutes. So a lot of things have happened in the last 4 or 5 years, and we'll continue to grow on that. But the first page of my report is broken down by job description. Sorted by description of the response, and for a grand total of 942 calls for my department this month. So that's just the Rutherford County Fire Rescue Department. The next sheet is the total, the 942 calls is year to date. That's from January 1 till Friday. The next sheet is the total run volume for the last month, which was 95 calls, and they're broken down by each individual category.
Chief Farley, on all those calls that you've been getting, how many of them are on like a major state highway versus the highways that are Rutherford County highways?
Majority of our calls are on I-24, 840. 231 is very busy, and Salem Highway. Matter of fact, we did a head-on collision this weekend on Salem Highway where Salem and Rock Bell intersect. So a lot of the major calls as far as vehicle extrication or vehicle rescue calls are on major thoroughfares like 231, 96.
Night calls, day calls, what's the percentage, do you know?
It varies. I mean, it seems like we can go 2 or 3 days without any kind of response or call, and then if we have one wreck on a day, we'll have 5 or 6. It just seems like they decide a certain day they're going to have all the wrecks. I mean, we may go 3 or 4 days, but it seems like we have one, we'll have 3 or 4. And I-24 stays very busy. The next 2 sheets is just a breakdown of the responses and the locations of the motor vehicle accidents that we respond to in all 4 rescue response districts. We had a total of 55 MVA calls with an average response time of 9.5 minutes. A lot of times what we'll stretch that out is if we have a rescue truck that has to go to the county line, like on John Bragg Highway, or if we have a run on I-24 out toward the Coffee County line, it tends to be an extended response time because everything is located a little bit more closer inward.
Can you explain to us, like there are a number of calls that you get, and here's one on that second page, the second one from the top call at the County Farm Road and the nursing home out there that was canceled. Can you explain why some of those things are canceled?
Well, what happens is when we're dispatched out by the sheriff's department, a lot of times at that time they dispatch on a vehicle wreck. They'll dispatch fire and rescue, and they'll dispatch EMS, and they'll dispatch deputy. If a deputy can get on that scene and ascertain that there's no leaks, no hazards, there's no entrapment, you know, the patients are out of the vehicle and everything's okay. A lot of times they may come in as a accident with injury, and it may not be as severe when we get there. So if they get on the scene and determine that it's not that serious and we're not needed, then they cancel us. So we return back to the station, which in a way is a good thing because it keeps wasting resources and fuel going out there at that call. And then a lot of times, even if we get on the scene and EMS is not there, we continue on because our guys are EMTs and they also provide patient care until the EMS arrives on the scene. The next sheet is a breakdown of all the county fire departments by type of whether it be structure fire, brush fires, the total number of acres, vehicle fires, hazmat, MVA, and so forth. It also gives their training hours, and so far for this year, the total department response of countywide is 2,140 calls. Now in 2010, to give you a little bit more background information, in 2010 countywide, we ran 1,321 calls. In 2011, we ran 1,759 calls. In 2012, we ran 1,989 calls, and then last year we ran 2,170 calls. So you can see it's 1321, 1759, 1989, 2170. Our call volume is continuing to grow, and so far that we're in October, we're already at 2140. So we're going to way surpass last year's in responses of what we're services we're providing. And the last page is what we send to the county codes at the end of the month, letting them know that these structures have been damaged by fire and that they will need to be required to pull a permit for remodeling or whatever. Just let them know that those structures have been damaged.
But that also, then the code sends it to the assessor's department, and then people that had the fire, then they can get a break on their property taxes for that year. Of course, I'm sure that they'd rather have the house there.
Yeah, year to date, so far this year we've done 14 fire prevention events, and this is where we may go out to elementary school or daycare or any type of facility where small children are involved, that they invite us to come out, and we'll take the plastic helmets and coloring books and go over fire prevention and fire safety with them. And so that we've done 14 of those this year. We've also, since July 1st, we have a campaign right now on smoke detectors, and we've installed 31 smoke detectors since July 1st. We have a grant that the state fire marshal is working through statewide, where they give us smoke detectors, and anybody who does not have a functioning smoke detector, they call us, we set up a time, we go out and install those smoke detectors free of charge to them, or come by and make sure that what they have is working. But we want to make sure that everybody in Rutherford County has a working smoke detector, and we will provide them at no charge and install them for them. That way, if we go out and install them, we know they're up and they're working. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to remind everyone that smoke detectors do expire, and carbon monoxide detectors also. I experienced that this past week myself. Put the new batteries in it. It still got the reading on the back, and it said, this is only good for this such and such a length of time. It had been that length of time.
Smoke detector's only good for 10 years.
And so
we recommend you swap
I wound
those
up
out.
replacing it this weekend, but they do expire. They don't last forever. So.
Yeah, and the ones that we're installing now have a 10-year battery on them. So when we install them and we connect them to that base, they automatically start working, and those batteries are good for 10 years. So once we install them, they don't have to be checked. Well, they need to be checked, but they don't have to be. The batteries don't have to be changed every 6 months. So that's something new that they come out with. So if you know anybody in your district or anybody who's in need of those, if you'll contact me, we'll be more than happy to come out and put those up.
City?
The city does the same thing.
You don't do it with the city?
No, so we do it in the county because the city has the same campaign. They do them in the city, and we will take them anywhere in the county and install them.
All fire departments have that? All city fire departments?
Most city fire, yeah. It's there if they want to utilize it. I don't know if Smyrna and Laverna are taking part of that, but I know that Murfreesboro is, and we certainly are.
What's actually involved in installing detector?
We just go out and make sure, look at the house, make sure that if there's like most people in our home have a hallway that leads to the bedrooms. We'll install one at the end of the hallway above the doors because smoke rises. Make sure it's functioning.
Are they
And
all battery powered, no electrical?
They're all-
Has to be put to them or anything?
You know, they're all battery powered, but now once you build your house, codes requires that you have a certain amount of smoke detectors, and they're all hot wired together. And you can buy replacements for those too. And I don't know if you want to do it now, but I have a request to write a grant.
Well, let's go ahead and look. Is there any more questions on the
Chief, I want to mention one thing you had in here too. I know she had 117 brush fires. Aren't we getting ready to get into some more of that season right now?
Well, I was getting kind of concerned about it here a couple weeks ago, but we got quite like 5 inches of rain over the weekend. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, this time of month after October 15th, you are required to have a burn permit before you burn.
I noticed we burned off 231 acres here in this county.
Yes.
That's a pretty good sized lot.
Yeah, considering we're 616 square miles.
Yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned those permits because from October 15th
To May 15th, you have to
required
permit. Yeah. And the good thing about that's changed, we've also adopted the International Fire Code. So what that does, that gives me the authority to, if things get like they were back in 2009, I believe, or 2010, whenever we had the drought, then I can step in and I can stop all open burning. We can also stop fireworks. So that gives us a lot more latitude because people were really panicking back at that time. People were really scared and they were blowing up my Facebook and my email, and we just didn't have the authority at that time to step in. But the commission voted to pass the fire code, so that gives us a little bit more authority to control those type of situations.
Any more questions for Chief Farley? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
We have been fortunate at the county fire department to get some grants and stuff, and if you're not, firefighters wear what we call SCBA, which is self-contained breathing apparatus, or otherwise known as air packs. It gives us the ability to breathe in a hazardous environment. And we have gotten grants. We've updated our equipment to 45-minute bottles. All the volunteer departments have the 30-minute bottles, and those are composite wrap bottles, and those bottles are only good for 15 years. You have to pressure test them every 3 years, and after 15 years you can no longer do that. Well, these bottles are coming to the end of their road, and what I want to do is I want to write a grant through AFG to bring all the volunteer departments, Las Casas, Kittrell, Walt Hill, Christiana, Fossville, and Allenville, buy them 45-minute packs. Those packs are $7,000 a piece. So we're looking at a $500,000 grant if we get it. But it will bring, and like I say, these bottles are expiring, so they won't be able to use them. And what this grant will do will help us to bring them up to NFPA standards on their air packs. And this is a vital safety issue for these young men and women out here fighting fires.
Any strings attached to the grant?
No, sir.
Matching
It would be
funds.
matching funds. I think it's 20%. It may be 10%. I'm not really sure on that. But I know that that would be a big chunk of tax dollars if we had to come out of our pocket with it. So I think that'd be wise to hopefully shoot for a grant to be able to upgrade their air packs.
And Mr. Farley, Chief Farley's looking for a motion to just approve requesting the grant.
Once the grant, if we do fortunate to get the grant, I will bring it back before you and budget, and it'll go through the process. You'll be told what the cost is to the county, and then you will have the opportunity to approve it, whether we accept it or decline it. Right now, I'm just asking for permission to write it.
Move to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Farley.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Getting all out.
Franklin Farley to
Administrative
apply for
chief.
the grant.
We have a motion and a second. No, this is just requesting it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. If y'all ever have any questions, just feel free to call me.
Will that only include the stations you were talking about? that you mentioned?
What it will do, it'll include all of the volunteers. I've asked them for I might have missed somebody. Equal, it won't include Equal because they've already bought their own packs.
Yeah, I know they got their own.
They went out and bought, matter of fact, they bought a different
You
brand.
didn't mention Rockvale in that one, or?
Well, Rockville is part of the county now.
Okay, yeah.
That's Station 4 of
Yeah,
Ruff County.
right.
So what every station we have has 45-minute bottles. So the volunteers, I'm trying to bring them up to the same standards.
Okay, that's what I'll make sure of.
Yeah. Thank you. You should try to read them.
Okay. How are you this evening?
All right, sir. How are y'all? In front of you have my monthly report. On the second page, as usual, we don't have any activities under mitigation or recovery because of no major events. Under preparedness, we've done quite a bit of training over the past month. We brought in the 45th Civil Support Team out at Smyrna to do biosampling class on the 30th of September. We've also done a couple of hazmat awareness classes, one for the Rookie School for Rutherford County Fire on the 2nd. Also, we did one with the Sheriff's Office just last week on the 24th. We've also conducted a radiation monitoring class on the 17th, and just today we did a hazmat decon training to the SORT team. They already know how to do decon. It was just more of a refresher course. There were a few important meetings we intended to. We had a couple of meetings, one with the Homeland Security District 6, which we are not part of. We used to be, but that is the one adjacent to us, so they invited us down for that meeting. We also had Homeland Security District 5 COMO meeting, communications meeting, which we are part of. On the second page, some topics that are pretty current. The tower project. Motorola's out there now connecting cabling and all equipment at Tiger Hill, Milton, Lynch Hill, Smyrna, and Rutherford County Sheriff's Office. As you recall, this project is in 2 phases. For the most part, the first 5 towers are first phase. The last 3 are the towers that we're working on right now to get the sites prepared. Also, just recently, Motorola let us know that Monday there'll be 3 engineers coming to town to begin the final programming and turn up of the first 5 sites. So we're going to start seeing some payoff on what Joe has been leading up for the past few years. As far as the remaining sites, there is a new building in place at the Hudson Tower site, and we're establishing services at it, and we're working the lease for the Bradaville site. When it comes to Homeland Security, there are grants every year, and they're usually done, in my mind, kind of in arrears. We're just now finishing up the Homeland Security 2013 grant. It'll be done by November. What we're doing is we're waiting for a gentleman from the SORT to finish his training so we can do the reimbursement for that. And we're also working the 2014 grant. Nothing on the 2015 yet, of course. Upcoming events that we have going on, starting tomorrow, the majority of my staff will be at the Emergency Management Associated Tennessee Workshop. It's a conference they do every year. It's basically TEMA's big conference every year. We'll go up to the Maxwell House and get death by PowerPoint. So it'll be fun. On the 31st, we attend yet another meeting with the National Disaster Medical Steering Committee. What that is that's National Disaster Medical Steering Committee. What that is that's the folks that decide if you have a major event, say in New Orleans, and you have folks in hospitals and you got to move them out. There's a whole plan for that, as you can imagine. And one of the airfields that's a backup airfield is Smyrna. The primary, of course, is Berry Field. So we go up there and we do the plans for that meeting just in case that ever comes to play. And this shouldn't shut down our phones or anything like that. Just let you know, starting the 3rd through the 7th, the office will get the Office 365, and they'll start, and OIT will also start the installation of our new VoIP phone system that they've been doing in other places in the county as well. Under response, we had 5 responses. Yes, sir.
Go on back up in that one to the line where EMA also conducted a plan.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
No. And it's,
we did a planning information sharing meeting with first response agencies throughout the county. The threat is very low, but we also get a lot of questions. And we also have already had an event that was not a real Ebola event, but we had to treat it like that until we knew better. And as you can imagine, that eats up resources when we have to deal with it. So right now, the lead agency is the State Health Department, and the County Health Department is lead as well. Also, a good source of information for us has been Randy White with EMS. He provided a lot of good insight on this. Because as y'all can see watching the national news, the situation and the response that is required has changed and probably will continue to change as the national authorities know more. So, but what it was, we were just feeling like we were not getting a lot of information, so we wanted to pull everybody together. We now have a list of folks that we send emails and messages to. Hey, here's the latest update, here's what we got. And it's a two-way street. They send us stuff as well because we're kind of the central location to get the information out. So, but you have nothing to worry about, okay?
We've heard that.
Response. We had only 5 responses this month. 2 of them were fuel spills. 1 was a hard landing by a twin-engine aircraft at the Smyrna Airport. 1 was a request for the mobile command center by the Sheriff's Office for a barricaded subject. And just last Friday, we had a garbage truck that was on fire. We typically don't respond to fires, but in this case, there was an initial report of hazardous material spill, which ended up to not be founded. So that's all we've had. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for my report this month.
Any further questions for Mr. Cass? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move we accept the report.
Second.
A motion and a second to accept the report. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That's it. Thank you. Okay, OSHA.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay.
I'd like to report that for the month of September we had a total of 25 injuries requiring medical attention. You'll see the breakout there. That brings us up to a total for the year to 171. Of that 171, 94 of them are recordable under OSHA standards. 62 had restricted days, 19 had lost days, and 13 were other recordables. On the next page of the report, you'll see those 25. The incurred dollars are estimated at $41,950. Of course, those figures are pretty immature at this time and will develop and mature as time goes along. At the graph, you'll see where we are compared this year to the 2 previous years. Claims are up, but like always, it's somewhat cyclic, and I do expect them to come back down a little bit before the end of the year. In 2012, we had a total at this time 152. Last year in 2013, we had 141, and right now we're at 171 claims. On the next page, you'll notice in the report that of those 25, 14 of them were with the Board of Education, and the dollars incurred for them are estimated at $12,250. And the county had another 11 claims. They were estimated at $29,700. Yes, sir.
Miscellaneous costs. Can you?
Yes, I can explain that. If you will remember, we had an event in the month of September at the Judicial Building, and there were 7 individuals that were sent to the hospital for decontamination. Of that 7, I believe 4 of them were with the ambulance service, 1 with the Sheriff's Department, and 2 within the county employees. And decontamination really doesn't fit into any kind of standard that we have other than miscellaneous. And unfortunately, those expenses, we weren't sure how much the expense was going to be, and that's what ran that up quite a bit. comes out that it's probably going to be for each one of those probably around $1,500 now is what I'm estimated at. And probably when those claims close, that will come down quite a bit. But we've never had a decontamination before, so nobody knew how to reserve the money for that.
This the one that was turned out to be false.
It was the one that turned out that there was no hazardous material found,
Okay.
but the event was real enough.
Yeah, all right, I got you.
Of course, when that happens, you take precautions, and that's what happened there. And that's what ran those dollars up. And if you look at that, those 7 are just absolutely through the roof, and that's because nobody knew how to reserve those dollars. And of course, on the next page, we broke those out, and you'll notice where those 11 happened, and all 7 of those were labeled with the judicial building, even though they were different places. It was basically, that's where we put them. That did not include the one, the sheriff does not include that one, so the sheriff had 2 other ones other than that. And then the emergency management is really one has to do with the fire department, and then one with the ambulance service. And on the last page of your report, you'll notice where it says, and this is where we talk about the total incurred dollars from year to year. In 2012, at this time, we were at $508,000. Those are mature dollars. Those claims are basically closed. In 2013, we're at 235, and I would say probably 90% of those claims are closed and settled now. Of course, the $262,000 that we have for this year, even though it's slightly ahead of last year, those are very immature figures, and probably once they mature, that will go down, just like what we were talking about on those decontaminations for the judicial building will come off there. And that's all I have to report for the month of September at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Good?
Yeah, I got a question for you. What procedures do you have, or that you work with these other departments to teach them or help them minimize these accidents? Like the Board of Education, I mean, do you meet with Mr. Odom or?
No, well, first off, the Board of Education has their own safety individual that works for the board,
Right.
that handles that. But we do, within the county, we have an inspector, Dwayne Hawkins, who works out of our office, that goes to every school at least twice a year doing inspections, making them aware of safety things, and to each county department. He does a report of that and then sends a copy to the principal and to Mr. Odom that addresses that. Now, what he's looking for when he goes in is the things that fall under the OSHA guidelines that we're looking for. In other words, he looks at the fire extinguishers. Obviously, OSHA looks at the fire extinguishers, inspection records, making sure that the sprinkler systems have been done. He's looking at those things. Also, other hazards, stockpile of paint that may be sitting around, rags, things that are put in the boiler room, in electrical room, storage, things like that. So those are things he's looking at to try and do that. And then we make them aware of other things that are going on as far as hazards that are happening, like high slip hazards, if we're having a lot of that going on. We're trying to address those issues with them, send out emails. We send out a flyer on a monthly basis to all the county divisions and to our contact at the Board of Education, and it's called our monthly news flash or safety flash. And what they do is we pick a topic each month and address that. Then we have a quarterly newsletter that we send out each quarter to all the departments and divisions addressing different things also. And so we try and keep safety out there in front of them on a monthly basis, keep people thinking about safety.
We do have quarterly safety training online.
Oh, yes, and we also have the training. Dwayne is responsible for the training, and he sends out a flyer or notice on a yearly basis, and then reminding people quarterly that there's training that needs to be done. And we talk about slip, trips, and falls, hazardous communications, those types of trainings, that the requirements under OSHA that needs to be done. That we get questioned on, that we're able to pull out our rosters and show that this training has been conducted.
Great. Well, thank you.
Who participates in that training?
All county employees. It's a requirement. All county employees. There's certain mandatory training, and we've got to prove that they've conducted and had that training. So.
Great.
Yes, sir.
One more.
Mhm.
Workman comp, we still got about 14 of them floating around, is that correct? Or
That is correct. We had dropped down to 13. I was going to be excited about that, and I had a new one or an old one that was there that has lifetime medical, and it opened up this last year, and it came, or I say this last year, this last month, came back and opened up, and it's being treated again actively. So we now have 14 again, open workers' comp claims.
That's was the system we were on before the OJI. We approved it. Okay. If there's no more questions for Mr. Good, I'll entertain a motion on the report.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
I do have one thing I'd like to bring up and remind all county employees. Open enrollment is going on now for your benefits for the year 2015. There have been some changes, and if an employee does not go online and do their open enrollment, they will see a change in their benefits, and their benefits will decrease next year. So I need to remind every employee to go online, do their open enrollment. It closes November the 3rd. That is next Monday. So we are less than a week away, and it closes at noon. And every employee needs to do that. If they don't, like I said, they'll experience a loss in the benefit. If an employee is actively working on it at noon and 12 o'clock hour hits, it will shut them down. They have to have it submitted before noon. Otherwise, it will lock them out. Also, the wellness survey that needs to be completed, the Sensei, if they fail to do that, and it's for the adults on the program, meaning the primary and the spouse that needs to complete that survey. And if they fail to complete that survey, there is a wellness fee for next year that basically amounts to $25 a month wellness fee that will be assessed. And to ensure that they don't have that wellness fee, they need to complete that Sensei survey. I recommend that if an individual is working to do their open enrollment, they make sure they get it all done this week. The wellness survey and the open enrollment. We've got people in the office that can take calls and help them. We've got people coming in the office doing both the survey and the open enrollment. We're there from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon. And please, whatever, make sure that they have an opportunity to speak to somebody if they've got questions.
Well, that 25 a month is 300 for 12 months is what you get hit with.
I didn't say that, but you are absolutely correct. And once it's assessed, it cannot be, it's not something you can say, oh, well, let me go do it and then take it back. It once
the county payroll, if you're on it, $300 is a chunk for you.
Yes, sir.
What is the telephone number?
My phone number in our office is 898-7715. 898-7715. And like I said, we're there from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Please, there's plenty of people. We've got time that we can help people and work with them. All they need to do is contact us if they have problems. I think Monday, well, today is Monday, this morning we received an email that came out that only 28% of the county employees have completed open enrollment out of 5,000. And we are already less than half of the time and only completed 28%. So that means there's a lot of employees that's going to have to deal with this next week, or benefits will change.
Well, one thing they'll find if they don't do it, they'll get this, it'll be put into the same category as last year, right? But there's some things that have been
That's
deleted,
correct.
like
The
optical.
Yes, sir. Last year, vision was part of medical insurance, and if you took medical, you had vision. This next year, because of changes in the federal law on health care, vision had to be broken out. So if you want vision, you have to sign up for it. If you do not go on and you just say, well, I will take whatever I had last year, then you have not signed up for vision. You will lose your vision care if you just walk away and not do anything. That's what I'm talking about, loss in benefits. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you all very much. Y'all have a good evening.
Warning for them too, time creeps up on you. Superintendent Salandis, how are you this evening?
All right. Hopefully my news is a little better. Okay. Start off with the last board meeting
October 6th, and went over the expenditures. Everything looked great with that. Next thing we
What's great?
Well,
Does that mean you're within budget?
That's, yes, sir.
Okay,
Staying
that
in
sounds
line,
better.
staying in line.
Thank you.
Next matter, we did do an amendment to increase the purchase of inmate stamps, and that's the ones that are indigent. So, and when they do receive any kind of funds in their commissary account, that's why the county recuperates that. But we needed to put some more in there just to make sure we have enough to supplies to the end of the fiscal year, so if that will work. Next one on the other business. Just inform the board about the mental health grant that we were awarded. And actually everything went through whatever we went through, public safety and budget, and now the funds actually are in our line items. So, and that'll be spent mostly through the volunteer behavioral agency. They're the ones that are going to equip the staff. Or the only part on our behalf was supplying the inmates and office space in kind. Informed them about the trip to World Outreach, which was great. Big thing there, the next one down is the right now the FCC doing some litigation there, well, reviewing it in a lot of jails and prisons to either reduce or take away the commissions received to correctional facilities from phone companies to providing inmate phone service. So right now there's a lot of meetings just trying to sway the FCC from doing that, because that does affect a lot of operations with the jails and prisons with funding, and you know, a lot of the money is used because it's outside of the county and state budget, so we can use it for programs and a lot of those other type of things that's not using government money. So,
Question: do you know if that's gone into actual rulemaking or not?
no, it's still
It's just discussion.
right. They've been having a lot of meetings with a lot of the jail organizations and American Correction Association.
So if it does go into rulemaking, please let us know so that we can comment on that
Oh,
in the
definitely.
rulemaking process.
We'll definitely keep y'all updated.
And another thing, are you required to have phones for inmates' use?
They have to have some kind of outlet to at least, you know, call an attorney or something of that nature. But it also helps with behavior issues, you know, allow them
I can imagine, yeah.
to use the phone and talk to their loved ones or things like that. So it's a vital part, you know, part of the operation. The God and Country concert went well. Everything was great with that, and that was all. The meeting was adjourned as far as the board meeting. Next page is the work release program. As of September, we had 18 in the program. Program is going great. Just every now and then you might have some, just maybe minor issues, but other than that, I think we're increasing to 24 by next week. So the program is going well. Next page is the yearly activity report. Shows our average head count of census was 174 for September. Felony days for that month was 106. Misdemeanors, you see, 5,110. GED program, or the HISET program, is going well.
Pretty close to 50% that we're involved in this last month, right?
Yes.
You told me before, but I can't remember. Who's teaching that program, the GED program?
The adult ed department. They supply the teachers for that. It's a great program. And next one is the next page is the September report for the monthly worker report. This is based on the labor used to work in all the government facilities around the county and even on our compound. And using that labor, we saved the county $144,128. That was September. October state letter pickup. We received $3,095.98 from the state for doing this state roads. That concludes my report.
Further questions for Superintendent Slandy? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
And so move.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Thank you much, sir.
Thank you.
I'm afraid to say anything, but there's been no budget requests yet. Sheriff must have not load us down, right? Okay. Miss Duke, you moved up tonight.
And I appreciate that. Okay, in front of you, you have our yearly activity report for September. There's nothing unusual about the first set of items. I would like to point out that at the bottom of the page where it says that Madison County still owes the $4,025, received that check before I came up here tonight, so they have paid in full. And the second page is just our programming report. Probably the only thing of interest on that is that our new drug therapy program is a huge hit with the kids. They're loving it, and we are loving having it. And other than that, I will answer any questions that you may have.
You came out with a report last year that showed all the reasons why they
Yes,
were.
the employee that does that for me is out on FMLA, and whenever he gets back and gets caught up,
Okay.
I'm going to have several months to bring before you.
When you do put that on, I'd like you to explain it. again.
Yes,
Definitely.
I will do so.
Okay, thank you. Because I was interested to know why
Mhm.
they were there, I guess the best way to put it.
He's actually got, he's going to do some minor updates to it, so it'll be exactly the same but totally different.
Like you and I was attention intelligence officer.
Also, I should also, well, I guess I gotta wait for y'all to vote before I add my last item.
Any further questions for Ms. Duke?
I have a question.
Okay.
Down at the bottom, you said that you just received the check from Madison County.
Yes, sir.
How long had they owed you that money?
If you look to the left, where it says billed 10/7/14, those are the days that all of the billing went out for that month.
Do you just allow them to pay at will, or?
No, we prefer that they pay within 30 days. As an example, if you'll notice, Perry County is behind a little bit. We're making an exception at this time for Perry County. They're a very, very small rural county, and I think that they're wanting to pay one check instead of two checks. And we don't suspect that that's going to be a problem, but we had generally 30 days is our usual time frame from which we'd like to see a check. But we do keep in close contact with all of the counties and the agencies. And
Do you charge interest after the 30-day period, or just
No.
let it float along?
no, they're good customers, so we wouldn't charge interest.
And plus, we just went up, what was it, 2 years ago we went up?
We went from, well, we could go back to the beginning, but just to keep it recent, we used to charge $125 a day per bed. We now charge $175 per day per bed. And that's, it might not be hard for some of these larger counties, but for Perry County, that bill is, they're probably having meetings about it, still trying to explain why they have
are a poor county.
to do so.
Any further questions for Ms. Duke? I'll entertain a motion on the report.
Move to approve.
Got a motion?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
My last item is just a reminder that we have our open house this Thursday. It's going to be from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and the entire building is open. Of course, we are the main attraction because we're so fabulous. We usually try to do 2 tour times within that 2-hour period. I can't get everybody back there and talk loud enough for everybody to hear and still conduct business, but if you're interested, Thursday's a great time to come out and see our facility and get any of your questions answered.
Gonna have a birthday cake there?
There should be cake and sweet tea, probably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sheriff. It's late enough for you.
Yeah. Well, I figure with all I got to talk about is going to take time. I want to start up. This is just for the commissioners. We didn't bring it for.
Thank you.
Skip, y'all too. Y'all were in the cities. We don't really respond to many calls in your districts. But these are. We'll be coming up with some more maps that will also show civil process served and criminal process, which will show a lot in your districts. Before we get started, I want to let you know one thing, a good note. The United Way campaign, the deputy to the mayor came to us and talked to us about really getting involved in it this year. And as November gets here, you will notice that a lot of the deputies will be wearing beards for No Shave November. For $1 a paycheck, per paycheck, $26 a year donation to United Way, I have allowed those deputies to, they are getting a pass on the SOP that says that you will not have a beard on duty. So that's a good thing for the community. So passing that on so everybody in TV land also, when they see the beards, they know what it's for.
There will be none down to the.
No, they'll be properly maintained and grown.
Some fast growing beard.
Yeah.
Okay, we've only got one item for you guys tonight. Make it easy on you. We have we want to recognize revenue from the JAG grant for this year, and it's $33,545, and we want to put that into our law enforcement equipment line item.
You got anything in mind to spend that on? Or
Radios.
Radios.
Okay, cool.
Be gone before you know it.
Huh?
Blue boxes?
No. Handheld radios.
Move to approve, Chairman.
Good.
Yeah, that would
We
give us
got a
time.
motion, we have a second. Second. Call the roll, please, Becky. Any discussion? Excuse me. Okay. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Gurley,
Aye.
Commissioner Nipper,
Aye.
Commissioner Piercy,
Aye.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes.
They do have really good Bluetooth. And other than that, we have a report, so
Okay.
I'll answer any questions I can. We seem to be running along. So far, so good, but springtime's gonna be entertaining, I'll say that. It'd be nice if fuel would stay down, though.
Yeah, I think that would help everybody.
I noticed the restaurants are figuring out business-wise, because everybody's got a little more fungible money.
Well, played golf out Mount Juliet today, Pine Creek. They're building houses right along that course,
Oh, wow.
all over the place. And they're going up, people are moving into them as soon as they get them through.
Wow.
They're building houses like crazy out in the county.
Yeah, this one too. So,
Anything on there extraordinary?
There's nothing to mention.
How's uniforms this year?
Good.
Gonna be okay?
Yep. Come in less and less every year. But we get prettier and prettier every year.
Stats.
report, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions of the sheriff or Mr. Chief Deputy Russell? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
That line item that deals with utilities, it looks like we're 2/3 spent, so you're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, that's why I was saying spring's probably not gonna be a lot of fun.
That goes again back to the water, and go back into this.
Can we do that now? Or?
What?
I was just gonna hand out accommodations.
Oh. That's hers, and then pass it down.
That's all that I've got.
I wanted to get into some statistics as well as the sheriff's office. One, just to let you know, we got ×4 females sleeping on the floor in the jail. We did send a pin around today, but none were females. There was about 15 males that left. So our population as of today, as of when I left over here, was 827 total population. Of course, we can house up to 958 people, but the ratio, yeah, has got to be perfect on there. So right now, the way that our annex, and that's the older part of the jail, is set up, there's ×4 females sleeping on the floor. Wanted to let you know this. It's been brought to my attention the past few weeks, about 6 weeks. I've kind of noticed it. On the weekends, call volume, and I'm planning on getting some more numbers and a bigger presentation probably next month. But if you are a citizen living out in the unincorporated areas of the county and you call for whatever type call, some being high priority calls, some very low priority calls, all of our units in the county, especially Friday through Monday morning, there are large periods of time that all of our units are tied up. Even lieutenants are taking calls. I was listening 2 Sundays ago as I was driving around through town in my Jeep, and I was listening to the radio, and I had a lieutenant that was answering a domestic call, which is really not normal. Lieutenants are there to supervise the sergeants, which are supervising the guys. But every unit in the county was tied up, and it has been this way on the weekends for quite a bit. I started doing my research, going back and looking. So that's why I'm going to be bringing more statistics to you, because if that's the case, then we've outgrown. We've done more with less and more with less. Till now, we're starting to do less as people call. We you know, it might be 2-3 hours for you to call before we come out to certain type of calls. Naturally, higher priority calls are going to take that priority, and dispatch has to justify the priorities of those calls. You know, if you get a dog running in your neighborhood, that's a low priority call to us. When you have a domestic and somebody's beating up their spouse, you know, or gunshots, or, you know, there's all different types of calls out there. So dispatch has to do the priority on that. So I wanted to make you aware of that. And I want to kind of go through some statistics, but do y'all have any questions on that real quick before I start moving on to some numbers?
Yeah, on a normal shift, how many people do you have that can actually work a call?
On a normal shift, probably about 10.
10.
So you have 13 zones. We have 13 zones in the county, the way we broke up the county into different pies. And at any given time, you will have 10 officers, sometimes less, because you have vacation time, holiday time, comp time, training. So then you start getting into less people calling in sick. Right now, I've got 8 people on FMLA. I got another 2 that are fixing the file. At one point, 2 months ago, in my transport division, it has 10 people in it. 6 of those 10 were on FMLA.
What is that?
Transport. They bring people from the jail to the courthouse or to doctor's appointments, And theoretically, they're supposed to be able to travel around the state and also pick up the other inmates that we need brought back to Rutherford County for prosecution or to serve their time for whatever reason. We've been robbing from Peter to pay Paul to get that division back up and going, and right now I've still got 4 out. You know, because the courts don't stop just because these people go out on FMLA. The courts don't stop. You know, the doctor's appointments don't stop. So then we're having to pull from everywhere, overtime, this and that, to make up for that division. And sometimes you pull from patrol. Emergency committals are killing us. But it's not only Rutherford County. It's killing every sheriff's office in the state. We formed a committee to try to start looking at this. You know, we used to send 2 officers per committal when we sent them, and now we're trying to send 1, but sometimes that 1 officer is running somebody to Memphis, Chattanooga, you know, where we used to just run to Nashville. Love it when they run just across the street from the hospital here in town. You know, those are great. But, you know, all these different things tax on our resources, and it's, you know, pulling us. Anything?
So, just like I'm looking right here, this right here, and you showed that to us at the last commission meeting, and I've used it, I've got a lot of mileage out of this, from that. And of course, I think it's important that people in the county see something like this too. The only way you fix that is more people. Is that what you're?
Yes, you know, we've tried to figure out in adjusting our time schedules, you know, everything we could do internally. And there comes a point, just with anything, with budgets, anything you work on, at some point you've got to do something different. And we know we're coming to that point, that there's something, this county is going to grow. We use the numbers to justify building the courthouse of what's coming in the future, 600,000 people. You know, your district alone is probably going to explode. And I've told you many times, you know, about the manpower issues in your district and your zone. So for everybody here, I mean, it's going to grow. Even for y'all's too. You're in the city. You don't think you see us because I'm not giving you a crime map today, but you'll see more of our officers because they're in your zones serving civil process and criminal process. Unfortunately, we probably serve more criminal out of your district than we probably do anywhere else in the county. You know, and that's one reason why we're going to get those maps. We talked about that today because I felt that I didn't have anything to give you. I was like, well, what is there? Well, there's the civil side of and criminal. So and all that stuff. I mean, we could shut down our civil and our criminal and move those people to patrol, but then you're going to have backup in warrants. I brought the mayor in a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago. We have 26,000 unserved criminal warrants right now. There are some victims out there that are needing those to serve. Those people need to be. Now, could we handle it if we served them all in the next 2 months? No, we couldn't handle it. I mean, those have been built up. You know, we ended up purging some from the 70s, but those have been built up since the 80s. I mean, some of those realistically, we know we're never going to serve, but the number is still there. The judge will not dismiss those warrants. We did a in-house audit a couple of years ago and took, and I don't remember how many it was, 2 general sessions, and they went through them with us, and they dismissed a bunch of warrants, kind of house cleaning, that we knew that you just were never going to serve them, and they were so old. I mean, you had some in there from the early 70s. Or mid-70s that we still had. So, you know, with all this going on, the county's growing, there's going to be more taxes on our resources as well. We received 2,264 state warrants last month. We served 2,493. Civil process, we received 713 civil papers. We served 731. Juveniles warrants, we received 76, we served 62. Our records on TIBRIS reports, and those are reports that we generate, we write reports. We wrote 1,075. And then arrest reports filed 364. Domestic reports 122 domestic violence reports. Crash reports filed by the sheriff's office was 66. Juvenile Tibers reports was 97. Total miles driven was 239,623 miles driven, and that was by day shift, the traffic units, and transport division together. Civil process themselves, they drove 6,000 miles. Criminal warrants, they drove 5,985 miles. They attempted 344 warrants that were not served. So they tried to serve them, but they just, 344 of them they couldn't serve. We ended up only spending $825 for last month in extraditions. So, you know, I just wanted to give y'all some quick numbers. I just grabbed these tonight. Next month I hope to give you more of an in-depth and bring a couple more people in to talk. If y'all got questions, I want to make sure I have everybody here to answer whatever questions you have. I asked Virgil to step up here in case there was something he could help me with question-wise.
Virgil or Robert, either one, you guys have this information going back a certain period of time?
Yes, sir.
So you can compare this year to last year to 5 years ago, that kind of thing?
Yes, we
Can you get us that information as well?
Yes, sir.
We can compare it all the way back to 1976.
Just another question. You mentioned a number of folks on FMLA. Sounds like you got an epidemic going on out there. Why? Why so many? And is it
actually, that's kind of down, and it's, if they get to file the paperwork, they file it with the county HR department, because Sonia and them take that. They help us with that tremendously, because we don't have people to do it.
And I can add the thought on that. Here's back in the day, without, you know, you've been here, a few others been here. Back in the day, if my wife had a child, I might be out 3 days.
Right.
Now the officer can take the entire period of FMLA also with the wife, and there's nothing wrong with him doing that. But back in our day, we didn't do that.
Right.
It was frowned upon and all that. But FMLA, you can't even think of questioning it now. So that's what happens a lot of times. Now some of them won't take all of it, a lot of them do. And then there's other issues there too. That's just one of them that sticks at you. Say, why do we have such an increase?
We got 3 with cancer.
Yeah, and there's
All
other
those
ones.
things, I'm not questioning the legitimacy of it,
Yeah.
but it just seems like, what's your percentage? You know, what's your percentage of?
When you look at number of people they have, it's,
Yeah, I got 515 total employees.
But it's like that everywhere. If you look statistically, even a small, if you look at the numbers, they're gonna have the same FMLA issues. I mean, it's just there.
And if you got sick leave built up,
Yeah.
then you're getting paid while you're there.
Well,
and
here's the other thing, the county decided a number of years ago, I think about 6 years ago, that if you're out more than 5 days, you automatically go on FMLA. We're used to you went out on sick leave if you had it. So you didn't see FMLA then. You might have seen sick leave, but you didn't see that. So that was a choice made about, well, actually might have been 7 years ago when that was decided.
And we had something in the water about 8 months ago, because there was a bunch of people that were having babies at the same time. So,
It's hard to budget additional people on sick leave. It's hard to do those kinds of things, and those are the type of things that would cause us that have to approve those bills heartburn. That's the reason I brought
But
it up.
it's always something hard to swallow. It's just when you look at there's formulas out there. You have seen them. Those who have been here even longer have seen them, staffing wise.
Okay.
It's a little harder to use that same system on patrol as you do in a jail for for post position. So there's a number of things you look at: size, population, number of calls, those type of things where you base it off of in manpower. And it's like we was talking about earlier. The sheriff brought up about the city jurisdictions, Smyrna, Laverne, and Murfreesboro. One of the things that we always want to point out, and we're getting better, even better at it, since we've got Larry Paces doing our crime analysis, and we're starting to get better at pulling statistics in on some programs we got that can pinpoint these areas, just like he's the one who put these maps together. And again, what you don't see on there are all the other calls that come in here for civil warrants, attempts, serves, and state warrants. And what you'll find is say we've got 15,000 people booked in jail. We usually arrest half of those. However, if you look at the Tibers reports for our arrest, it's usually about half of that number, but we're arresting for other jurisdictions. That's our job. So you could have an event occur, and we keep up with that in Laverne, Smyrna, Murfreesboro. Not as much in Smyrna because they've got their own general sessions. But what you have is that an officer will go out here, they'll take a report from a citizen in Murfreesboro, for instance, and it may be something that it's not something they're going to do right then and chase this guy down. It's not a major felony, but it could be vandalism or something. We'll get that. And we're the ones that run it down, and we're the ones that arrest, but that's what our constitutional job is.
There has to be also some statistics, and you just quoted a whole page of them there, but there also has to be some as it relates to the number of officers, patrol officers you had per capita of the population. You probably have those out there somewhere.
Yes, the FBI actually has a breakdown, and we talked about that a couple weeks ago about getting those numbers. The FBI puts out what they say is recommended for a population this size for our county would be 300,000 people, and we should, fall in something. Murfreesboro City should fall. They kind of have the same ratio with inside their cities, Smyrna, Laverne, and so we were talking about that. At one time there was one commissioner that wanted to do an analysis. I don't know what the answer is. I know we need help, and we need. That's what we're coming to y'all.
If we have that type of information available to us as to how many patrol officers we had 10 years ago with the population that we had versus 5 years ago versus now would be helpful for someone like me.
One of the things that happens even in the jail is when we did the first staff analysis, without getting going off in left field here, is when we figured the numbers we needed, we knew would be great, what we could live with and what we couldn't live with. You couldn't open the door with any less than this number. And we ended up being able to get in this middle area here, which is a lot of times where you're at. There's no perfect world over here. But what happens is, a lot of times, is the bigger you get, the more responsibility, and sometimes you have to streamline down divisions and stuff. And it's like when we first figured this for the jail, for instance, we didn't have a disciplinary board. You didn't have, somebody that worked on a number of other areas of needs, and your mail call was different, and visitation was different, and all that. When you look at the hours a day on that, and you start comparing it even in the field, the number of calls, again, the size, we tried to reduce zone size. We try to use the censuses that are taken, and a lot of it's guesswork out there on some of it. You have to try to look at building permits issued, those type of things in our zones. And that's this is all the stuff that you have to go in there and try to pull together. And it's there, but it's not going to always paint the picture you want to see as far as if you look at the federal standards, because, and I'm probably going to get corrected, but the last times that I've looked at that 100%, looking at those numbers, normally it's 1 to 500 on average. And, I'll just tell you, it's almost impossible to meet that standard, period.
Well, it's just another piece of data for us to look at, and it'd be interesting to see what we've had in the past versus what we have now versus the population. So.
And there obviously shouldn't be any decision made until you get to chew this stuff up anyway. It's just, I think Sheriff wants to start producing this. We've got, we even have a better way of getting some statistics for you. We're working toward it. I mean, everything's generated with statistics when it gets down to it. We're limping a little bit, but.
Let me tell you, with the patrol officers, 12 years it's been since the last time we had any new patrol officers.
Any increase in the numbers? Is that what you're saying?
We haven't had any increase in our booking staff, detention staff, really in 12 years. Other than that, we've had a couple of grants for detectives, and then of course the SROs. That's the only growth we've had in the past 12 years.
Maintenance people, something like that.
Yeah, we got one maintenance person.
So, what about, maybe 10 years ago, maybe it was the 2000 census, it went out. But you had constables that gave, I don't know, were they criminal and civil or just civil?
They did civil.
Okay.
Y'all did away with them.
Well, we didn't do away with it. Tennessee Code Annotated did away with it.
Well, the county.
You did a private act.
Yeah, the county did a private act.
They got that you don't have counties over X amount of people. That's when they start dropping.
The training on those people.
Yeah, I can imagine it is.
And from what I've been told, there was some things that were happening with constables that cost the county quite a bit of money.
See, the problem is that you just can't take when you're trying to fill in a patrol officer, you can't take a guy out of jail and put him on the road because he's not a certified officer and he's not qualified, he doesn't have the experience. And in terms of putting him out there by himself and so on to work alone. So even if we were, the commission were to grant you X number of additional people, it takes the time. And not having these transport people, I heard a patrol officer going to do hospital duty today that normally if you hadn't had your transport people out, I would assume a transport person or someone else would have done that.
It used to be patrol or transport did all hospital duty. And to try to keep patrol officers on the road, we started cross-training our detention staff.
Right.
We have a few senior officers that we feel that we can teach and or get them through the firearms qualification, and then we send them to do hospital duty at a lesser rate. Plus, you know, you can kind of shut down a pod. You can put everybody up for a while and do that. You know, where you can't stop somebody
When
calling
you
in
get
on
this
patrol.
many people out on FMLA and so on, then it just puts a hurt on you. That you
FMLA has put a hurt on us for the past year and a half. It's I pushed out my hair right here for that.
7 years ago, you didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
That's it. It was coming.
But I mean, there's one thing. If you want to try to get an ideology, and I know a lot of y'all have done the research on this stuff, but again, if you look at, for an example, best example I can think was we looked at it even years ago, was Cobb County, Marietta, Georgia. That used to be Murfreesboro. And all you got to do is look at that, and look, you can follow it. I mean, they had a county sheriff's office that, you know, was yay size. And when I say yay size, less than 100 officers, you know, a couple hundred people in jail, and I mean now they've got like 2,000 people in jail, and they ended up evolving into a county police department and the sheriff's office here, separate, you know, that could cross transfer, but you ended up with a county-wide county police in Cobb County. But they quadrupled in their numbers in the sense of went from that 100 to 600 deputies out there. So that's kind of where it's going.
How long or the length of time it takes from a new recruit to get a solo patrolman? I mean, how long are you talking about?
26 weeks.
26 weeks, okay.
Because you got 10 weeks at the police academy, 16 weeks in training.
But then it's you're talking about a good 2 years before you get a seasoned officer.
2 years to get a seasoned officer.
And I'm not kidding, I'm just saying if you can keep him.
Yeah, but I mean
that's
he's ready to be solo in a car in 26 weeks.
And can tell you that a vast majority of our patrol officers we've hired out of the jail. I mean, we try to start, this is my preference, start everybody in the jail. They learn our policies, procedures, learn how we do stuff. Spend a couple of years in jail, we transfer them. They want to go patrol. And so then we're going out to patrol, but then you have other agencies that are paying more, and so they're getting a couple of years under their belt, and then they're looking around and they're going. And so then we start the process all over, because we pull another detention officer out of jail to patrol, hire another detention, so.
So if you had the funds given to you, it would take at least 26 weeks from that point.
Correct.
To get patrolman out there.
Up and going by himself.
Up and going by himself. Okay.
And then, but on top of that, they've got, if they're not already post-certified, at some point within a year, you've got to send them to the academy also.
Well, that's part of the 10 weeks academy, 16 weeks in training with FTOs.
Okay.
You could put them out there, but they still be really green.
Green.
Yeah.
It's like basically any post thing, any technical job you go into, you can do it, and then but you learn more.
It's not back in his day. They just threw him a badge and a gun and said, "Go."
Right, but I mean,
they didn't actually throw a gun.
Yeah, well, actually, he was on a horse too. No, I'm just kidding.
But they could actually relieve patrolman of accident duty and.
And that's one thing I've been trying to do too. Is by law, I can have a reserve. So we've been trying to build up our reserve deputies. And a lot of times what that gives you is another person in your car that can help you with your paperwork. If you work a wreck, they are out there directing traffic and all that. They go through they go through a lot of training. They go through the 16 weeks of training with an FTO. They have to take our Citizens Academy. And once they complete all that, they can ride with the deputy as much as they want, as little. We try to tell them 20 hours a month, but they're giving that time to us free. When I took office, I think we had 4 left, and we're up to about 15 right now. My goal is to get us up to 50. We're getting their time for free. We just have to pay for their uniforms and equipment and stuff, and they help us out. So.
Changing the subject, but I got a question.
Okay.
You wrote it down because I've been meaning to ask, and I guess since I saw you before I saw anybody from the Board of Education, I'll ask y'all first.
Okay.
When Bart Smith had the job of the licenses and all this, he also went around to the schools checking the tags and this, and school activity buses putting the inspection. He inspected with the brakes and stuff like this. Okay. I don't know if you know or not, but who checks school activity buses? They all have them. All the middle schools, high schools especially, they have a couple. And I hope the answer is that they inspect them themselves. I hope it isn't that. I have no idea who does it.
State's supposed to inspect every school.
As far as I know,
it's not a school bus.
the Board of Ed is taking care of that. They do, because after Bart's and Tomley leaving this earth, we didn't have anybody that could do that.
Okay.
And
I didn't think it was.
in that position, when all that happened, Bart came over. If you recall, we ended up giving a patrol officer position number to HR. We got Bart's position number and Bart, and we put that in training. And as time has evolved, Bart's no longer with us. Another deputy was in there. Now we have another one. Things have evolved. We're not doing the wheel tax stuff. Me and Lisa talk quite a bit. We're doing what we can, but we're not doing.
Well, you've seen them. All the high schools have sometimes they have a full-size school bus. Other times they got that half bus, a couple of half buses that take their different teams around to ball games and stuff, be it volleyball or basketball, this type of thing, where they don't. Football usually goes on school buses. They get the people and all that. But
I defer to the Board of Ed.
Okay.
I have no
I'll
clue.
check with them. Then you help me out. You cut half of it out. Okay, but it's. I just hope the answer is, and they inspect them themselves. That's pretty easy to do.
That whole process with wheel taxes and those types of things, license being bought in the home county where you live, is not an issue the way it used to be because of the state law requiring driver's license ID to buy those types of things, and that's cut out a lot of the people going out of county to buy those things, so it's not as big an issue as it used to be. But it used to be a big issue. It really did.
And then, of course, now you can't really spot a vehicle anymore. They don't have it on there, so.
But they got the state that's on.
Well, and I get people ask me every once in a while about that. Why aren't you enforcing that more? And whenever people are on the back roads, there's not as many people. Where are the masses of the people in this county?
Interstate.
The interstate, but also in the cities. Right. Inside the city limits are the masses. And so we don't patrol, the cities. If we see a crime happen, if we see something, we have a duty to respond, but we don't primarily patrol the city limits. And so we don't primarily patrol looking for wheel tax inside the city limits. If we see it out in the county, we stop and pull them over. If we see them in the city, we'll stop and pull it over. But it's not something that they're generally looking for when they're looking at every car.
And it's really not as big a deal as it used to be.
It is not.
It isn't. There's nowhere nearly the issue that there was in years past. As a matter of fact, 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember which, I own a second home up in the mountains of East Tennessee, and I wanted to buy an old used Jeep and leave it up there to be able to get around in the mountains, and I was going to have it licensed in Sevier County, and I went to have it done, and they wanted my ID, and I showed it to them, and they said, you got to go to Rutherford County. So I know that the thing is working. So at least it was for me. I didn't realize that I really couldn't buy something there, but they said, no, your ID says your primary residence in Rutherford County, and that's where you got a bike. So they wouldn't sell it to me. So I think it's working.
Anything else for the sheriff? Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gregory. Why don't we start with the September report first?
Okay.
Okay.
For the month of September, we had 691 animals that entered the shelter. 34.5% came from county jurisdictions, 9.1% came from the city of Laverne, 41.1% came from the city of Murfreesboro, and 15.3% came from the town of Smyrna. We had 145 animals that were adopted out, 396 animals that were humanely euthanized, 54 animals that were reclaimed by their owners, 13 animals passed away, and 88 animals had other outcomes. That gave us an adoption reclaim percentage of 28.6% and a euthanasia percentage of 56.9%. When you factor in the other outcomes, which were typically wildlife that were released back into the wild, that gave us a live release rate of 39.2%, and we had 5 of the reclaimed animals were from our surgery programs.
There's a deal going on, and it has been for the longest time, in the Daily News Journal, Pet of the Week that they put on there. They put a dog and a cat. Usually successful in adopting those out.
It varies on what animal's on there, and I've yet to find out who actually puts that animal on there. I think somebody there, I can't get answers from them, pulls it off of our website.
Really?
It depends on the animal. If a small, very highly adoptable animal will get 5 to 10 calls the next day, and then some weeks we don't hear anything.
I know that probably the dogs are a lot more successful than the cats are.
Actually, we've seen an increase in our cat adoptions. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's picked up, which is great.
Yeah, that's why I cut from the newspaper and gave them.
Oh, the article from last week. Mm-hmm. At the end of September, we had 115 animals that remained in the shelter. We had 1,786 people visit the shelter looking for a lost or new pet, and 2,480 log calls and voicemails for the month. We had 629 calls that were received, 1,654 calls that were completed. You can see the breakdown of the jurisdictions there. And our officers traveled 10,631 miles. Year to date, we've had 2,276 animals that have been into the shelter. Our adoption reclaim percentage is 26.5%, and our euthanasia rate is 61.1%. Our live release rate is 35.2%. We've had almost 6,000 people that have come into the shelter and 7,233 log calls and voicemails. 5,253 calls were received, 5,282 calls were completed, and we've traveled 33,236 miles.
Let's go bite report next.
Yes, sir. Rabies exposure and bite report. For the month, we had 28 bites. 3 of those animals were tested. One of those tested unsatisfactory, which is considered the same as a positive. For our other exposure, we had 6 other exposures that were reported. One of those animals were tested and did not test positive. Our bite reports go calendar year versus fiscal year. So since January the 1st of this year, we've had 17 animals within the county that have either tested positive or unsatisfactory. The latest one that we had, which was September 30th, was a dog that tested unsatisfactory. There were some issues there with how it was handled. We received the animal without it being kept cool, and that's what the state vet was able to say contributed to the unsatisfactory report.
Any questions for Mr. Gregory on his report?
Move to approve the report, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let's take budget amendment next.
Okay. All of our officers have tough books in their trucks that they're able to mark themselves on scene and off scene, as well as do their notes out in the field. Last year, when we went from Windows XP over to Windows 7, We worked with OIT and they helped to purchase some of those tough books versus posting towers back in the office, and Paul's purchased some out of their data supply line. We've been able to fill some of our officer positions recently, so the 7 tough books are not enough now. What this does is we're asking to pull money out of our donation line, which is restricted for Paul's use, to purchase some additional laptops, as well as to put the mounts in the vehicles. Right now, the officers just have the tough book laying in the seat or wherever. We like to have those mounted where they can work more efficiently.
So you're transferring money from where to where?
We're transferring money from the donation account, which is set aside specifically for Paul's, over into our other supplies and materials, which would be for the mounts, and the data processing equipment, which would be to purchase the additional tough books.
So how much are you transferring?
Total is $6,500.
Okay.
Got 95,000 in donations right
Yes,
now.
sir.
And you can you use that for anything when you say health and welfare out there? I mean,
well, I can tell you what we've used it for in the past. It purchased the adoption trailer, if you recall, and some of the associated equipment with that. I believe it also, and this was right about the time I came on, I believe it also purchased the equipment that was used back in the vet wing as well.
All of those things, like the dash mounts that you have, those are all legal. Like with our sheriff's department, they won't write you up for.
No, it's different. These are just mounts that would be in the floorboards for the computer to sit on, whereas now the computers are on the seat. It wouldn't be like a dash cam or anything like that. No, sir.
they manufacture them right here.
Okay.
I mean, you get them set up right here in Murfreesboro, right?
The mounts.
Stands.
Actually, you can purchase those online from various places specific to the vehicle, to where you don't even have to drill them to the floor. They just mount to whatever seats.
Well, the assessor's office has been using them for years. A different kind.
I've installed one in my car before.
So you can stop, sit, and you just have it turned there, so you do it.
Right
It's
now,
a lot
they're
easier
sitting
than on a seat.
Yeah, they're sitting in their lap or having to use the seat. Most of our vehicles don't have consoles.
And that's actually dangerous, because if you have any kind of sudden motion with the vehicle, the computer can fly.
Yes, you got straps. Oh, when it's on the seat, yeah. Just got straps, okay. So you heard the request.
Move to approve.
Second. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please, Becky.
Commissioner Gurley?
Aye.
Commissioner Nipper? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes. Okay. Next, you should have
I'm not in the habit of handing out books to you all, but it is actually past time for us to review our rules and regulations. Back in the spring, we had an issue with a particular case that the across the street, the General Sessions judge says it's basically anything that's written in your rules and regs right now, I can't really enforce because it doesn't give us what the penalty or punishment would be. So that kind of opened our rules up to where it was already time to make some changes, and that kind of necessitated that we needed to be going ahead and moving that in to a little bit higher gear. So what we've done is kind of the changes that we've been kind of building up and whatnot, we put into these proposed rules. And I think from what I understand from Commissioner Schaefer, he kind of like for me to go just page by page with what the changes are over our current rules and explain those to you, and then answer your questions.
We've done the changes. Who's we?
Well, the changes were things that we have noticed within our department that needed to be updated. We took various rules and regulations from other departments, not reinvented the wheel, and took things that they were using. It's also been reviewed by the mayor, Commissioner Schaefer, as well as the county attorney's office.
HR?
HR has not reviewed this.
Okay.
Not reviewed this.
County attorney is signed on?
Yes, the county attorneys reviewed it and sent back the word that they were fine with it.
And some of these are just going to be word changes, and but some of them have got a little more meat to it.
Just really some of them are just housekeeping.
Yes, sir. A lot of it just boils down to some of them are taking terms that were either not defined previously or the ones that were defined previously and making those word. It gives a little bit more meat to those. On page 1, as our under Article 2, and you can see where it's got the comments out to the side to it, there was a portion in our rules that stated that if an animal had went back to its original owner's property, they weren't charged an impound fee. However, it's difficult for us to know in the shelter that this one was impounded under that, and it very rarely does that happen, but it deleted that portion. Basically, those folks are paying those impound fees now. There's just not a good way for us to keep up with that. Under Article 6, there was a portion that was the same as under Article 3, so we deleted that part, which is kind of a duplication there. Article 7, under the setting humane traps, we added the domestic animal there. I want to give you a little bit of a background on our trapping. Our wildlife numbers are increasing significantly, especially during the summer. It's not uncommon for us to have 20 calls to pick up wildlife out of traps. Not exactly sure how we got into that business as much as we did. The way the rules and regs are currently written, it talks about nuisance domestic animals, bites, or rabies suspect animals. Not what we're getting are calls from the general public that they've either set a trap or they want us to set a trap for a nuisance raccoon or skunk or this, that, and the other, which really isn't something that we should be doing as much as we are. Then the other part of it is we're having a lot of wildlife removal companies that are setting traps, charging these folks pretty significant amounts to have a trap on their property, and then when they capture something, the homeowner calls them and says, hey, I've caught a skunk in your trap, I need you to come get it, and they're saying no call animal control. So they're being paid for a service basically to set a trap, and then we're having to pick up and go from there. So what this does is it specifically says that we're handling domestic animals. We will set a trap for a skunk or a raccoon or whatnot if it's a rabies or a bite suspect animal. And then it also talks about that we're going to accept domestic animals from those trapping agencies. They capture a wildlife, they're going to have to take care of it themselves. Last year we took in around 1,100 wildlife out of 7,740 animals, so it's a significant number. Over on page 4, and for some reason when it did it put the page numbers down in the left corner versus the right. Under Article 11, we added, it had originally only indicated that if an animal had an identification tag. Of course, these were originally written, this part was in 2006 when microchips weren't as prevalent as they are now, so we included microchips as a form of identification. And then the previous rules also state an animal being humanely destroyed. We changed that everywhere that we could find it to humanely euthanized versus destroyed. Under Article 12, where it talks about detention when rabies suspected, what we did there was add what our fees are. Those were fees that we were charging, but it wasn't specifically spelled out to someone who quarantines their animal at PAWS. And then the second portion under that same article, there had previously not been anything in our rules and regs that stated how to handle a law enforcement, canine law enforcement officer as far as a bite case. So when that happened, we were a little bit at a loss on how to specifically handle that. And then we also got to where there was a couple of cases where we weren't receiving cooperation from that law enforcement agency. This specifically spells out that they can continue to use that animal for those duties, but it also gives PAWS the ability to view that animal just to make sure that there's not anything as far as behavioral changes and whatnot to protect the victim of that bite. Under Article 13, we kept this section in there. State law dictates that if an animal's not been spayed or neutered before it's adopted, that the person has to put down a deposit. It's very rare that we do that now because we're doing surgeries in-house. However, it is still necessary for the one odd case that we have every now and then to make sure that that's included. The instances where an animal would leave without being spayed or neutered would be if there's some type of a medical condition going on to where they need to recover from that condition before they're able to have the surgery. But we do require they put down that deposit according to the law. On down under that, the letter A, we changed that. It did state that an animal had to be vaccinated within 15 days. It's very difficult at times to tell if a puppy is 3 months or if it's 3.5 months or 4 months. So we increased that to 30 days to make sure that we cover those ages there. Page 6, Article 15, Section D. This is a new section. It's nothing in our current rules cover this. Most agencies do have something that does cover this as far as in their ordinance, which is the sale or giving away of animals on public property, typically being your shopping centers, your malls, Walmarts, and those type things. Just because you don't know the history of that animal, obviously most of the time they've not been vaccinated against rabies or any other communicable disease. And we're asking that be limited to try to prevent some of these problems. There's actually been some instances to where people have walked up to underage individuals and said, "Oh, that's a cute puppy," and they hand it to them and turn around and walk away. Then you've got a 15, 16, 17-year-old left holding a puppy that they have to take home to mom and daddy who doesn't want it there, and it's exposed them to various things without the adult even having any knowledge of it.
What's the penalty for that?
The penalty for that would be the same penalties that we have that we'll get over to on one of these last pages here. Probably the, I don't know the exact word to use, the thing that is the biggest change that we're asking for in these rules and regs is under Article 17, where it talks about inoculation required, and this is your rabies vaccination. Most of you probably may not know this, but the county does charge a $2 license fee for every rabies tag that's issued within Rutherford County. It's collected by the veterinarian, so most people just realize that, hey, I just paid for my rabies vaccination. They don't understand that $2 of that does come back to the county. Currently, that brings in anywhere from $100,000 to $105,000 a year. We vaccinate about 50 to 52,000 animals within Rutherford County. From what I can tell, with going back through with the documents that are online for CTES, that fee has not been changed since around 1978. That's when it went to $2. Prior to that, it appears that it became the $1 fee there was a $1 fee started in the 1960s. We're asking, and we've spoken to the mayor in detail regarding this, of increasing that. It's been well over 30 years. I'm 36, so it's before my time even. We're asking to increase that fee to $5. We looked at a couple of different options. A lot of places charge a flat fee per animal. A lot of places charge a certain fee for an animal that's been spayed or neutered, and then they significantly increase that for an animal that's not been spayed or neutered. If we go that route, first it's going to be difficult to prove if a female's been spayed or not. Some animals you can tell just based on surgery scars, some of them you can't. But then your veterinarians are going to say, well, I'm not going to charge, let's just say for instance $25 for an animal that's unaltered plus the cost of my rabies shot. You could be talking a rabies shot being $40 to $45 easily in some places. So we think with just a flat fee, increasing that, first we think is overdue, but second of all, we would ask that if it is passed, that we use a portion of that to go back to PAWS for certain purposes. The only thing that's going to decrease PAWS' number of animals and help us to be able to provide the same amount of services that we're providing now without additional manpower based on the population growth is to limit our intake. The only thing that's been proven to limit the intake of animals in any jurisdiction has been spaying and neutering. So what we're asking to do is that the fee be increased, but a portion of that be set aside for the spaying and neutering of animals within Rutherford County, as well as to do some PR work associated with that. So we're not just coming and saying we want an increase and then the money just go back to the general fund. We're asking that it be used for a specific purpose. If we just, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Our intake numbers are going down some, but we're not having a significant impact. And if you look back over at my reports that I show you every month, our adoption rate has gone up and our euthanasia rate has gone down, but not significantly. You'll never be able to adopt enough animals out to end your euthanasia. The only thing that's going to do that is limiting the intake of the animals to start with. what we had proposed, if this is passed, is originally to start out just spaying females. Obviously, we'd like to neuter males, but they're not the ones going out and having litter. So if we focus on the females first, that's going to be the thing that's going to give us a significant decrease in our intakes, which is what we're looking for. Under Section C of Article 17, that there was another portion in our current ordinance that just fit better with that, so that's why we pulled all that into the same article. Under definitions, animal services, we also added halls because we're still known as both within the community. The previous ordinance didn't have a definition for an animal control officer, so we added that. At large, we made that definition a little bit better by putting in there the part about if the animal is off the property, it has to be under the control of a person that's physically capable of restraining the animal. So allowing, a 13 or 14-year-old to have a 100-pound animal could be considered at large if the person's not capable of handling that animal. We also, the current ordinance states that it's against the ordinance to have fowl running at large, but doesn't dictate what fowl are. We updated the definition of livestock. The definition of neglect was updated, especially under Section 4 on page 9. Before, it just says that failing to provide an animal with adequate shelter, but it didn't specifically say what adequate shelter was. So we added that adequate shelter is something that protects the animal from extremes of weather, physical suffering, or impairment of health, is large enough to allow the animal to make normal body movements, and the biggest part of it is the shelter must have a solid roof and floor and 3 solid sides. Typically what we were seeing is someone would take like a pet taxi carrier and say, well, my animal has shelter, but it has all of those holes on the side of it. So that, yes, the animal could get in there, and it did have 3 sides and a top, but it wasn't 3 solid sides, so the rain would come in, and the snow and the wind and whatnot.
I got a question on that.
Yes, sir.
On a shelter, typically for like a horse or a cow or something, you would have a shelter that would have a roof and 3 sides possibly, but then you would have a bed, something like sawdust or something like that, and not necessarily a concrete or wood floor for that.
Correct. The difference is going to be, these are going to be geared towards domestic animals. For livestock, even in many cases, a shelter wouldn't even necessarily be necessary if they had some type of a windbreak. So the way that you, and the shelter definitions for livestock versus domestic animals would be considered different. And that's part of the reason why the state law states that there's only certain folks that can investigate livestock neglect. And it's got to be folks that are either a veterinarian, the county extension agent, or someone with a degree from a university in animal science, so they understand those husbandry practices much better than just someone off the street who typically deals with just dogs and cats. On over on page 11 are the next changes. And the transporting part, the current ordinance states that animals can't have excessive heat. We updated that to where it talks about endangers the health and safety of an animal. Under Article 23, our large animal ordinance, and I've done some more study on that even since the mayor and Commissioner Schaefer and I met last week. For the large animal disposition, it states that the animal has to be posted in 3 public places, one of which is the courthouse door. But it doesn't specifically state that the animal has to be held for a certain time period. So some folks are holding them for the standard 3 days that you would hold a dog or cat. Some of them are housing those animals for a week. Ever since I've been involved in animal control, we've always housed them for 30 business days to allow an owner to come forth. State law, I was incorrect. State law does not specifically state that it has to be 30 days. They just state that it has to be posted. I spoke to the Humane Society of the United States this morning. They forwarded me to a place called Horse Haven of Tennessee, which is out of Knoxville. And their recommendation is that we stay with the 30 days that we've been doing. before, none of this was written in, so there's really, in our ordinance now, I think it says 10 days. I don't even think it talks about posting it in 3 public places. So this gives us, it gives the department better guidance on how to deal with those large animals. And unfortunately, we are seeing an increase in those, especially our horses. There's no market for them right now, so people are just taking and dumping them, and they're not coming back to reclaim. And then we're stuck having to hold those animals for that time frame. Being that there's no market, the last few horses that we've had, we have a rescue group that we've been working with that we've literally given them horses just to get them off of our feed bill.
Someone has a couple of horses, a lot, and a couple of horses, and one of the horses passes away. They call you and say, what do I do? Do you give them the number to call?
They call Appertain, yes, sir.
So you give them that number, you help
Yes,
them
we do
out.
have that in our office, yes, sir. Under the fowl running at large, as I said a while ago, it said that fowl could not run at large, but didn't tell us what fowl were, so we defined that. The last few sections, the next few sections cover our dangerous and our potentially dangerous dog ordinance. The only thing that we did in that was delete some information with the findings that didn't pertain anymore. And then over on page 15 and 16, it stated that once the court determines that the animal is dangerous or potentially dangerous, they have to meet these restrictions. But it didn't state what time frame they had to meet the restrictions in. So we had some folks that were basically just kind of kicking the can down the road. And it was up to the officers and the county attorney to remember, hey, let's try to put a time frame in when the order was written for the judge to sign. This we specifically put in that on potentially dangerous, we wanted to see them meet those requirements within 30 days because they're less stringent by definition. And then for the dangerous dogs, we'd like to see that the restrictions are met within 60 days. That way, if you had an animal that was declared dangerous, they could kick the can down the road for quite some time before they decided to do anything.
Now, excuse me, let me ask you, on that comment you just made about kicking the can down the road, will these rules be grandfathered in, or can, from this point forward, they have to apply?
What happens from here is if you all approve this tonight, it has to go through the steering committee, then to the full commission, and then it has to actually go to the state legislature because it's part of the private act. So I would say we're probably being conservative. I'd say we're looking at probably not a start date until next July.
Right, but I mean, these rules would take effect.
They would not take, they would not,
apply.
well, they would apply from that day forward.
That
We
day
wouldn't be able to go
forward.
back and change the court orders on the animals that we currently have.
No ex post facto.
Okay.
Now let us go.
So they could still kick, some of them could still kick the can
The
down
ones
the
that we
road.
currently have, yes, sir.
But if you've ever been involved, it's amazing how people can drag things out like that.
Yeah.
We're just trying to add a little bit more teeth there.
Right.
On those animals, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but our dangerous and our potentially dangerous dogs, we actually reset those calls to visit those houses once a month to make sure that they're either continuing in the process to meet the requirements they've not met, or if they have met the requirements, that they don't lax up and going, oh, hey, Paul's isn't coming back. No, we're
Right.
continually out there.
I mean, I'm for just, hey, make them from that date forward complying with everything.
It's gonna take a while to get through.
On page 19, Article 29, the severability, our current ordinance didn't include anything like that. So if one part of it is found not to be valid, we're asking that this be put in so that the rest of it can continue to remain in force. And then what Commissioner Schaefer asked a while ago as far as what are the penalties or the violations, this is the section that's missing completely in the ordinance, which is why the General Sessions is saying they can't really enforce the Rutherford County rules and regs. What we're asking is that if anybody's found guilty, it is a misdemeanor. It's a $50 fine per day per violation. As part of this, though, we're also asking, as part of the violations and penalties, we give the court some different options as far as sentencing. Our department has always been about education. We would rather go out and educate an owner to try to correct a problem versus taking them to court. To where you have some jurisdictions that are more police type, to where there's zero education and it's all court. What we're asking is to model a program similar to what Metro has. They have what they call an animal offender school, so that the court can order, as part of the punishment, for the person to go through through basically an education program that we would do there at Paul's. It takes, we went and visited Metro and sat through one of theirs a few months back. It took about an hour to go through this, but it's basically educating these folks on what current Rutherford County laws are and state laws regarding the care of animals, so that we can try to prevent these problems in the future. As part of that, Metro is charging $65 a person to attend that school. We would turn that information back into the court to be part of their sentencing. So it is something that would be, you know, Paul's isn't going to get rich over it by any means, but it is a way for us to say that we're not just out here writing citations, we're also trying to educate folks too, and it also would bring in a little bit of revenue to the department. And that's the last change. I know that's a lot to digest, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. This has been a months-long process for our department, and a months-long still to go. But as like I said, where we currently are now, basically the things that we have in here that don't fall under state law, we're unable to enforce.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Gregory?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the foul.
Yes, sir.
Okay, say you've got a subdivision here, you've got farmland all around it.
Mm-hmm.
Lady calls in, hey, farmer's chickens on my yard. You gonna come out, or do you come out and warn? Do you come out and fine on the first trip, or how do you handle it?
Our first option is to always try to educate the owner. So we would make contact with the owner and warn them regarding that issue. Citation would be our last resort. That's not something we like to go out and do entire officers up in court. But if after educating that owner, we're not making any headway, they've really left us with not very many tools in our toolbox. But we always try to use education first.
Okay. Mine's the second question.
Yes, sir.
Back to the puppies in the parking lot.
Yes, sir.
You said you were going to try to limit that or stop that?
We would like to stop that. No, we're not going to be able to do that 100% by any means. But there's currently no provisions in our ordinance to limit, stop it, do anything about it. It's perfectly fine to do that now, just based on some of the issues that we've had, some of the issues that other jurisdictions have had and whatnot. We just think that that's the best thing. You've got animals that are sitting down in crates that aren't being cared for in the heat of the summer or the dead of winter. But again, you also have animals that have not been vaccinated, and that's a bigger concern.
Very well.
Make people unhappy though sometimes.
She'll make them real unhappy.
Don't
Reckon
make
you
some-
not could look at that and maybe word that somehow, if you've got some you'd like to give away, run them by, let us check them, maybe for a small fee or something, and then try to give them away?
Well, some of those issues, for instance, parvo or even rabies, which thankfully we really don't have to worry about rabies in dogs and cats like we once did. There'd be no way for us to know on day one if that animal's been exposed to a rabid animal or not. And then also you're talking about an animal that may be perfectly fine today but may break a parvo tomorrow once it's into that new home. But then not only that, you also typically have parents of those litters on the premises that haven't been vaccinated. There's no way for us, like I said, to know that if they've been exposed to a rabid animal. Then you've also got multiple folks coming around where you have instances where you have to be concerned about a child or someone being bitten because that parent is there trying to protect that litter or whatnot. So there's just a ton of problems that potentially can go on there that I just don't think it's worth the risk.
Being from a rural area, I can see them winding up in the ditch.
Yes, sir.
That's where they'll wind up. And then, you know, they'll still,
Right.
some of them will survive, some won't.
Right. I mean, Paul's is an open intake shelter. We've always been open intake, and I, you know, I'm not naive enough to think that hey, people just want to bring their animals to Paul's. Unfortunately, we are a euthanasia shelter, but as a last resort, we don't turn anyone away as long as they live within our county. So no one can say I didn't have an option. It's whether they chose to partake of that option.
And these rules apply throughout the county. The cities also. They'd all had inputs in before on the original. So when it came out, so what Mr. Gregory would like us to do is to approve it. You're going to have another shot if it gets to the commission to approve it, and it goes on to steering because that's our legislative body, and then the commission, and we go to the commission. If the commission approves it, I believe it's 2/3 vote each way. then it goes, we get it to the legislators, and when if they approve it for a private act, and it comes back, it still requires a 2/3 vote after they approve it. Yeah, so what I'm getting at is if you look it over and you get a lot of feedback on this, because it's going to be on TV several times, but it is something we need to get going, because you know, a lot of people, I like kick the can, drag their feet, whatever you want to call it. And that's the main thing I think this does.
It's definitely a working document. I'm not coming in and saying these are dead set and fast. But where we are now, we know we're kind of dead in the water because there's not much we can enforce after that.
Protection. So, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve and forward.
I second it.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Go on to steering.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for, oh, we'd like you to do something.
No, sir, it's yours. Like for you to review it.
Can you put it in the other 14 commissioners box downstairs?
Yes, we can get that done this week.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And maybe you could ask Ms. Taylor if she could send out to an email to those 14 commissioners that it's in their box.
Yes, sir.
So we can keep these.
Yes, sir. I'd like for you to review them. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me or email me.
Thank you, sir. Okay, remember the next 2 months when we meet. Tell me.
Third Monday instead of the
Fifth or fourth Monday. Thank you. There you go. I wrote it down. All right. Any other business before us?
November 17, December 15.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.